Alexander Pichushkin, a prolific serial killer in Russia, was known for saying that life without killing is like life without food. Russia had never seen anything quite like Pichushkin before. How many people? Alexander Pichushkin was born on April 9, 1974, in Moscow. Because his parents had separated when he was still a young child, he did not have a robust male role model to guide him as he developed into an adult. This hampered his growth. His entire formative years were spent experiencing hardship and upheaval. He had a difficult childhood, and even though Pichushkin had been an outgoing child in the past, he evolved into a different person after sustaining significant brain damage at a young age. At a young age, he suffered a blow to the head that left him with brain damage. He was eventually transferred to a school that specializes in helping students with disabilities due to the bullying he received at his regular school. It was later discovered that the injury had damaged a significant portion of his brain, resulting in aggressive tendencies on his part. The harm caused by these tendencies. Pichushkin's relationship with his maternal grandfather was very close. Pichushkin's maternal grandfather recognized the young man's intelligence and supported Pichushkin's interest in chess. Becoming an exceptional player and finding a way to rein in his aggressive tendencies by becoming a dominant force on the chessboard allowed him to do both things for him. Not long after, he improved so much as a chess player that he routinely beat opponents who were twice or three times his age. His cherished grandfather's death profoundly affected him, and not long afterward, he began acting belligerently and violently toward other people in response to their presence. On July 27, 1992, when Pichushkin was only 18 years old, he committed his first murder. He discussed his plot to murder others with a friend named Mikhail Odichuk, who was under the impression that he was joking about it. When Odichuk found out that his fellow student was severely, he tried to get out of the predicament as quickly as possible. Pichushkin, in a fit of rage, murdered his friend by hitting him over the head with a hammer and then throwing his body down a well. The police questioned Pichushkin about the death of Odichuk 3 days after the incident. Some evidence pointed to his guilt, but the investigation never led anywhere. Nothing was ever discovered. Pichushkin was in Bitsa Park on May 17, 2001, when a man named Yevgeny Pronin challenged him to a game of chess. After the match, he invited Pronin to accompany him on a stroll. Pronin went with him, and the two made their way to a secluded park area. After that, Pichushkin produced a bottle of vodka and extended an invitation to him to have a drink, which he graciously accepted. Pichushkin, who had previously owned a dog, informed him that it was the anniversary of the passing of his cherished pet and that he wanted to pay his respects at the dog's grave. The two men drank a toast to the dog before Pichushkin suddenly attacked Pronin with a weapon and threw his body into a nearby well. The men then drank another toast to the dog. Maria Veracheva was one of the highly fortunate individuals to emerge from the Pichushkin disaster alive. On February 23, 2002, he lured the pregnant saleswoman into Bitsa Park and pushed her into the same well where he had disposed of the bodies of the majority of his victims. When she tried to cling to the sides of the room, he grabbed her by the hair and repeatedly hit the back of her head against the concrete walls until she finally fell. He left, believing her to be dead. Thankfully, she was able to pull herself out of the well and survive without having an abortion because of her ordeal. Veracheva went to the police to report the crime. However, because she was an undocumented immigrant, she was compelled to recant her statement that Pichushkin had attempted to kill her. A teenage skater named Mikhail Lobov was also one of the survivors. On March 10, 2002, he was given a blow to the head and pushed down the well after being lured into Bitsa Park by Pichushkin with the promise of cigarettes and vodka. Pichushkin fled the scene, mistakenly believing that the boy had passed away. He was fortunate that Lobov's jacket managed to be caught on a piece of metal inside the well, which prevented him from falling into the freezing water below. He was able to free himself and climb out. A few days later, he confronted Pichushkin, to which the latter responded by threatening to call the police on him. An invitation to have a drink in Bitsa Park was extended to a neighbor named Konstantin Polikarpov on November 15, 2003. Pichushkin struck him 3 times with a hammer before tossing him down the well after being killed. Once more, he left, proceeding under the assumption that his victim had passed away. Although Polikarpov was able to escape, he sustained head trauma that left him unable to recall anything about the assault that had taken place. As soon as the body of a former officer named Nikolai Zakharchenko was discovered, the authorities began to take the killings more seriously. His body had been murdered on November 16, 2005, and instead of being buried in the well, it had been left out in the open for the police to solve. Pichushkin had begun to show bravado by leaving dead bodies where anyone could see them, but he continued to exercise sufficient caution to evade capture. Pichushkin committed the last murder on June 14, 2006. Pichushkin, a coworker, had murdered Larissa Kolodjina, who had worked at the same store as Marina Mosklyova before she went missing for no apparent reason, on April 12 of this year. Despite this, it appeared that Mosklyova was unconcerned about Kolodjina's mysterious disappearance, presuming that she was even aware of it. She went for a walk with a coworker in Bitsa Park, and while they were there, he attacked her with a hammer. Mosklyova had written a note to her son, telling him where she was going and who was going with her shortly before she left with Pichushkin, but Pichushkin was unaware of this. The note additionally included his contact number. The young man called Pichushkin, who informed him that he had not seen his mother. After the boy, obviously suspicious, told his father about what had happened, the latter proceeded to call the authorities. Another fact that Pichushkin was unaware of was that a metro ticket was concealed within Mosklyova's clothing. Pichushkin was seen walking alongside her in the surveillance footage reviewed from the station where she had purchased the ticket. 2 days after that, he was taken into custody. The fact that Pichushkin always had a logbook nearby was one of the pieces of evidence that could be used against him. The record, as mentioned earlier, featured a chessboard-like layout with 64 individual squares. Each square reflected the death of a different person. Pichushkin discovered that 2 of his victims had survived, which led to the number 62 being filled and being reduced to the number 60 later. 48 of the alleged 60 slayings were found to be legitimate. According to Pichushkin, he looked up to Andrei Chikatilo, another serial killer who committed horrifying killings in Russia. Pichushkin says that Chikatilo was his hero. He stated that his objective was to surpass his idol's confirmed body count of 52 victims by killing at least 64 people, representing the number of squares on a chessboard. His idol's body count was 52. Pichushkin also claimed that even if he did reach 64 murders, he would still kill more people unless someone intervened to stop him from doing so. Pichushkin was found guilty of both first-degree murder and attempted murder on October 27, 2007. He submitted a request to the Russian court asking for the body count to include additional victims. For his safety during the trial, he was confined to a glass cage. The judge took an hour to read the verdict: life in prison with the first 15 years to be served in solitary confinement. The court handed down the sentence. Pichushkin is still being held in solitary confinement at this time. However, in 2016, a woman whose name is only known to be Natalia visited him, and the two ended up getting married. Thanks for watching.